Rain tapped softly against the diner window. A shivering girl sat alone in the corner, clutching her teddy. When the waitress offered her dinner, she whispered, "She said I don't deserve to eat." The lonely CEO overheard, and a painfully familiar ache rose within him, setting off a chain of choices he could never take back. Late October in Sandpoint, Idaho, pressed in from all sides, wet, gray, and muffled, the kind of dusk that blurred the world into watercolors, more memory than reality. Noah Sinclair's black Escalade idled in the parking lot of May's Diner, windshield streaked with rain and pine needles. Inside, everything felt distant, the drone of the engine, the quiet ping of the dashboard clock, his own reflection in the glass, eyes shadowed and tired. He sat for a moment, letting the rain drum its soft, ceaseless lullaby around him. In this sealed cocoon, time had lost meaning. The rain was white noise, soothing and relentless, a soundtrack for the empty years since Emily passed. After stepping back from his life in Chicago, Noah had been working remotely from Idaho for a while, trying to find his footing again away from the noise of the city. 4 years and still, his world was silent, a silence so thick that even the softest sounds seemed to echo forever. Tonight he felt it settle in his bones. He was not living, only moving through the motions of life. He turned off the ignition and let the hush of the outside world seep in. The neon sign flickered above the diner entrance, casting a pale, uncertain glow over the lot. Noah shouldered his coat, felt its weight, a little too heavy, like everything else, and stepped into the rain. He took in the smell of wet asphalt and wood smoke from somewhere nearby. It was the kind of small-town scene that once promised comfort, before comfort slipped out of his reach. Inside, the diner was a time capsule of formica and chrome. Booths with red vinyl seats, a counter stacked with coffee cups, and May herself behind the register, her silver hair pulled back in a bun. A handful of regulars lingered over pie and late coffee, their laughter low and easy. For a moment, Noah thought he could fade into the background, just another traveler passing through. Then he saw her. At table 7, near the far window, a small girl sat with her back very straight, hands folded in her lap. Her blonde hair was tangled and wild from the wind, her cheeks stained with old tear tracks. A faded pink suitcase rested on the floor beside her, and in her arms was a threadbare teddy bear missing one button eye. She looked about 6, small for her age maybe, but her posture was rigid, eyes locked on the tabletop as if it might vanish beneath her. May came by with a gentle smile. "Hey there, sugar. You want something to eat?" The girl's reply was a whisper, but the words seemed to hang in the air. "She says I don't deserve dinner." Noah stopped cold. His chest tightened so fast he almost couldn't breathe. It wasn't pity, something far sharper, colder, and more familiar. It was as if his own past had reached across the years to tap him on the shoulder. In that instant, a chill ran up his spine, unrelated to the October wind. The words weren't just sad. They were a verdict, spoken by someone who already knew how much a person could hurt. He stepped forward, slow and careful. "I'll pay for her meal," he said quietly to May, who nodded and disappeared into the kitchen without fuss. Noah slid into the seat across from the girl, leaving space between them. He didn't want to scare her. "It's all right," he said, voice as soft as he could make it. "You can eat. That part isn't up for debate." The girl kept her eyes fixed on the teddy bear's battered paw. "If you're not going to take me," she said, her voice practiced and almost mechanical, "this chair is mine." The way she spoke, calm, matter-of-fact, made Noah's throat ache. He recognized the armor of someone who'd learned too soon not to hope. He let the silence stretch, not wanting to fill it with empty reassurances. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. She hesitated, clutching the bear tighter, then whispered, "Piper." He nodded. "I'm Noah." No titles, no explanations, just a name given as a peace offering. Piper glanced up just long enough for him to see the bruised blue of her eyes before looking away. A moment later, May reappeared with a grilled cheese and a bowl of tomato soup. She set them down gently, with a side of crackers and a glass of water. Piper eyed the food, but didn't reach for it. Noah pushed the plate a little closer. "You can have as much as you want. I promise." She stared at the bowl, silent, then finally picked up the spoon. Her movements were cautious, as if every gesture was a test. Noah watched her eat, slow, precise, savoring each bite. She kept one arm looped protectively around the bear. Each time the diner door opened or someone laughed too loud, her shoulders flinched just a little. When she finished, she set the spoon down and folded her hands in her lap. Noah wanted to ask questions. "Where are your parents? Who brought you here?" But something told him not to press. Instead, he said, "It's getting late. Is there someone you want me to call?" Piper shook her head. "No one to call," she said. "She left me here. She said if anyone asked, I should say I don't deserve dinner. Because I ruined things." Noah clenched his hands beneath the table, forcing himself to stay calm. "You didn't ruin anything, Piper." The words sounded strange coming from his own mouth, like he was borrowing someone else's voice. He thought of Emily, her laughter in the kitchen, the way she always believed there was good in the world, even after her diagnosis. He missed that hope. He missed being able to give it. He cleared his throat. "If you could go anywhere tonight, where would you want to go?" Piper's answer was immediate, quiet but steady. She hugged the teddy bear to her chest and whispered, "Anywhere that isn't back." For a long moment, Noah just sat there, listening to the rain tick against the glass, feeling the old ache in his chest pulse with something new. He nodded, standing up. "Okay," he said. "We'll figure it out together." He glanced at May, who gave him a nod of approval. Piper rose, carefully lifting her pink suitcase with both hands. Her small frame was almost swallowed by the oversized coat she wore, but she moved with a strange, deliberate dignity. As they stepped into the rainy night, Noah held the door open for her. She paused at the threshold, looking up at him with wary, unblinking eyes. He didn't reach for her hand, but as they crossed the lot, she drifted closer until their shoulders almost touched. He could feel the tension in her, the way she tried to make herself small and invisible, but she never let go of the bear. Back in the car, Piper sat quietly in the passenger seat, suitcase at her feet. Noah adjusted the heater, filling the SUV with a gentle warmth. As he pulled out of the lot, he glanced over and saw her watching the rain streak down the window, her breath fogging the glass. She didn't say another word, but as they drove north toward the lake, Noah realized for the first time in a long while that his presence meant something. Maybe not much, not yet, but something. And as the lights of Sandpoint faded behind them, he knew there was no turning back. Whatever came next, he was in it. For Piper, for himself, for the hope that somewhere along this road, they both might find a way home. The drive from Sandpoint to Priest Lake was shrouded in mist, headlights carving tunnels of gold through the darkness. Noah kept one hand steady on the wheel and the other clenched tight in his lap. Every few minutes he glanced sideways at Piper, half expecting her to vanish, a ghost conjured by his own loneliness. But she was there, as real as the raindrops on the windshield, her faded pink suitcase propped upright between her feet. The bear she called Button sat in her lap, small paw pressed firmly to its own battered ear, as if the threadbare toy was listening for something only children and the broken-hearted could hear. Noah tried twice to make small talk. "Do you like cartoons?" was met with a small shrug. "What's your favorite color?" Got no answer at all. Eventually, he let the silence settle, realizing he'd spent most of his recent life running from exactly this kind of quiet. Now it seemed to stretch between them, not empty, but cautious, like a bridge just beginning to take shape. When they arrived at the cabin, Noah flicked on the porch light. The old log walls glowed honey-colored in the drizzle, the familiar outline somehow different with a child at his side. He let Piper go in first, standing in the doorway for a moment as if bracing for a storm. Inside, the air was tinged with cedar, the sharpness of cold stone from the fireplace, and the distant memory of Emily's lavender hand cream. He flicked the switches and the space filled with warm lamplight, dust motes swirling like fireflies. Piper paused just inside the door, looking around as if cataloging every possible escape route. He set her suitcase by the worn leather couch. "You can put your things wherever you like," he offered, trying not to sound as awkward as he felt. Piper nodded, a small, businesslike motion, and stood protectively beside the bag. The kitchen, always tidy to the point of sterility, felt suddenly inadequate. Noah scanned his supplies and realized, too late, that he had no idea what children actually wanted to eat. He reached for bread and cheese, the safest bet he could muster, and set about making grilled cheese sandwiches. The first round went badly. He left the pan on too long, and the air filled with the acrid scent of burning cheddar. The oven beeped accusingly. The toast stuck and then collapsed as he tried to flip it, scattering crumbs across the counter. A bowl, too smooth from hundreds of washings, slipped from his damp hands and shattered on the tile. The sound echoed, sharp and final, making Piper's shoulders jerk in surprise. Noah swore under his breath and closed his eyes. Here he was, a man who could command boardrooms, negotiate contracts that moved millions, losing a fight to a loaf of bread. He took a breath, started over, and this time produced something edible. Tomato soup, not too hot, with thick slices of torn bread on the side. He poured a glass of water, found the smallest spoon he owned, and set everything down on the coffee table near where Piper sat curled on the edge of the couch. She eyed the food, cautious, her hand never leaving Button's ear. "It's okay," Noah said, keeping his voice even. "I promise there's plenty." She ate in slow, precise movements, every bite deliberate, as if she was testing the food for poison or disappointment. He watched, not hovering, but present, making sure the water was within reach, draping a towel near the fireplace for her to warm her hands, leaving the bathroom door ajar so she wouldn't be afraid. Each of these gestures was a quiet offering, proof that, for this one night, she was not invisible. Noah retreated to the kitchen, giving her space. He busied himself washing dishes, pausing now and then to glance into the living room. Piper finished her soup, then carefully set her bowl aside, placing the spoon parallel to the rim. She hugged Button tightly, gaze drifting over the fireplace, the bookshelves, the photographs he'd never quite brought himself to pack away. He went to a hall closet and dug out a clean Skybridge Logistics t-shirt, a relic from a company picnic. and held it out to her. "It's not pajamas," he admitted, "but it should be comfortable. The bathroom's down there. Take your time. If you need anything, I'll be right here." She took the shirt with both hands, as if accepting a fragile gift, and disappeared into the bathroom. Alone in the quiet, Noah sat on the bench in the hall and lowered his head into his hands. What was he doing? He could manage a fleet of trucks crossing 3 states, keep his entire company humming with a single phone call, but he was hopeless at this. A little girl needed comfort, not logistics. He caught sight of his reflection in the hall mirror, hair mussed from the rain, eyes rimmed with exhaustion. He barely recognized himself. He was about to stand when a soft voice drifted out from behind the bathroom door, barely more than a whisper. "Are you still out there?" Noah's heart lurched. It was the first time she'd called for him, not as a stranger, but as someone whose presence meant safety. He cleared his throat, making sure his reply sounded calm and certain. "Yeah, I'm here." A long pause, then the sound of water running. When Piper emerged, her hair was damp, cheeks flushed from the warmth, the Skybridge t-shirt hanging almost to her knees. She paused in the doorway, and for the first time, she didn't look away when their eyes met. Noah smiled, gentle. "Better?" She gave the faintest nod. He guided her to the small guest room, a space he'd never actually used. The twin bed was neatly made, a faded blue quilt smoothed flat. He pulled back the covers and set Button on the pillow. Piper slid in, clutching the bear and pulling the quilt up to her chin. Noah hovered in the doorway, not wanting to overstay. "If you need anything," he said, "just call. I'll be nearby." She didn't answer, but her eyes followed him as he retreated. He sat on the bench in the hall again, this time listening for the soft, even rhythm of her breathing. He waited, uncertain, half expecting to hear tears. But the cabin was silent except for the crackle of the old heating unit and the quiet patter of rain against the roof. He pulled out his old journal, a habit he'd abandoned after Emily's funeral, and scrawled a single line. "She isn't mine, but I won't let her be alone tonight." The words felt raw, unpolished, but true. Sleep came in fits and starts. Each time he drifted off, he dreamed of Emily, her laughter echoing in the kitchen, her fingers tracing circles on his wrist. He woke to the gray light of dawn, the weight of loss a little less sharp than usual. He brewed coffee and started to gather his keys and coat, preparing to drive Piper into town. As he moved through the living room, he heard a small gasp behind him. Piper stood in the hallway, clutching Button, her eyes wide with panic as she saw the duffel bag by the door. "No," she pleaded, voice shaking. "Please don't make me go back to her." Noah dropped to one knee, eye level with her, his own heart thumping hard against his ribs. "You're not going back to anyone who hurt you," he promised, slow and steady. "We're just going to figure out how to keep you safe. I'll stay with you the whole time." Her breath came in shallow bursts, but she nodded, her fingers tightening around his sleeve. For the first time since they met, she let herself lean into his side, just a little, her guard lowered for a single trembling moment. Noah felt it, the first fragile thread of trust, thin as a spider's silk, stretched between them. And in that instant, his own loneliness felt a little less permanent. He realized, with a start, that Piper wasn't the only one searching for a reason to believe in kindness. Together, they stood in the morning light, the world outside cold and uncertain. But inside the cabin, for just a heartbeat, there was the warmth of two people learning very slowly, how not to be alone. The sky was still shrouded in gray when Noah loaded Piper into the car and set out for Pendorele Community Clinic. The lake, usually glassy and serene in the morning, looked choppy, restless as his thoughts. Piper sat in the back seat, button clutched tight, her small feet swinging just above the floor mats. She didn't speak, but Noah could sense her vigilance. The way her eyes tracked the trees, the way her grip on the bear tightened with every bump in the road. He tried, gently, to reassure her. "We're just going to make sure you're okay. Dr. Lee is nice. She helps kids all the time." Piper only nodded, her gaze locked on the passing landscape. In that silence, Noah realized he was almost as nervous as she was. The CEO in him was used to controlling outcomes, steering meetings, predicting risk. Here, everything was out of his hands. There was no script, no strategy, just a 6-year-old girl who'd learned not to trust, and a man afraid of letting her down. The clinic was a low-slung building with murals of birds and wildflowers painted along the entrance. Inside, the air smelled faintly of lemon and disinfectant. The waiting room, with its mismatched chairs and battered toy chest, was a world away from Noah's minimalist office in Chicago. No glass partitions, no chrome, no hushed efficiency. Here, chaos was the rule. Flyers for bake sales and lost dogs cluttered the corkboard. An old television played cartoons at low volume, ignored by the children slumped next to weary parents. Noah felt out of place, an alien in a world where pain was not hidden, but ordinary. Dr. Savannah Lee was waiting for them, a petite woman with warm brown eyes and the patience of someone who had seen more than her share of heartbreak. She knelt to Piper's level and spoke gently, introducing herself and Button in the same breath. "He looks like he's seen a lot of adventures," she said of the bear. For the first time, Piper's mouth twitched in something like a smile. The checkup was thorough but kind. Dr. Lee worked slowly, never hurrying Piper. She measured vitals, checked for bruises or hidden injuries, asked about sleep and food. Piper answered with nods or monosyllables, never quite meeting anyone's gaze. But when Dr. Lee asked, "Has anyone hurt you?" Piper's face froze, and she retreated behind Button, silent. Dr. Lee didn't push. She finished the exam and turned to Noah. "She's physically okay, dehydrated, a little underweight, but nothing urgent. Her affect is shut down. She's holding herself together, but it looks like she's been alone for longer than just one night. I'd call it chronic neglect. It might help to have her talk to a counselor. But for now, she needs stability more than anything." Noah thanked her and followed Piper back to the car, the words "chronic neglect" echoing in his mind. He felt a new kind of anger stir inside him, one that was cold, sharp, and deeply personal. Since Emily died, he'd felt grief, regret, the hollow ache of absence. This was different. This was the fury of seeing someone else's pain, the kind that comes from witnessing an injustice you can't ignore. He texted May from the parking lot, asking if anyone had come looking for Piper. "Not a soul," came the reply. "And I checked with Gus. No one local." That knowledge only made the tightness in his chest worse. They drove to the Bonner County Sheriff's Office next, a squat brick building with faded lettering and a flag snapping in the wind. The waiting room here was nothing like the clinic. The paint was chipped, the furniture mismatched and scarred. A vending machine rattled in the corner. It was a place where people waited for things to happen. Sometimes good, often not. Noah signed in at the desk, explaining quietly to the clerk that he'd found a little girl alone at a diner and needed to file a report. Piper stood at his side, quiet and watchful, button tucked under her chin. The clerk called for a detective, and a few minutes later, Lieutenant J. Kim appeared. A calm, broad-shouldered man in his 40s, with an easy way of speaking and the kind of patience that comes from years of listening to bad news. He led them to a small interview room, a space meant to be comforting, but clearly shaped by necessity, not kindness. The walls were painted a fading blue, a few posters about safety and missing kids curling at the edges. Lieutenant Kim knelt beside Piper, speaking softly. "Do you know your last name, sweetheart?" Piper hesitated, eyes darting to Noah before she whispered, "Dalton." "Do you know where your parents are?" Lieutenant Kim asked gently. Piper bit her lip. "My new mom, she said Daddy doesn't want me anymore." The words dropped like a stone in water. Noah felt his stomach twist, a cold, electric surge of anger rising in his chest. He had not felt this kind of rage since Emily's final days, when the world seemed bent on stealing everything good and leaving only the ache behind. But this wasn't grief. This was fury at a world that could let a child believe she was unwanted, a lie engineered for maximum harm. Lieutenant Kim kept his voice gentle. "When did you last see your dad?" Piper shook her head. "Before she came. She said I don't fit in her family." Noah could see the shame flare in Piper's cheeks, a flush of humiliation no child should ever wear. He placed a hand lightly on the table between them, offering silent support. Lieutenant Kim took detailed notes. "We'll check our databases. There's a process for these things. Child Protective Services will help too." He turned to Noah. "I'm glad you brought her in." Some people would have kept driving. Kara Bishop from CPS arrived soon after. A brisk, no-nonsense woman in her 30s, clipboard in hand, glasses perched on the tip of her nose. She spoke directly to Noah, then to Piper, explaining what would happen next. "We'll look for your family, sweetie. But until we know more, you'll stay somewhere safe. Mr. Sinclair, you can stay with her if you like, at least until we know who to call." Noah nodded, barely trusting his voice. As Kara stepped outside to consult with the sheriff, Noah pulled out his phone. He scrolled to his old contacts and found Aiden Cross, a private investigator in Spokane, a man he'd worked with on corporate matters, but who had a knack for finding people fast. Noah sent a quick text. "Need help locating family of a 6-year-old girl named Piper Dalton. Time is urgent. Will pay for speed." He slid the phone away and turned back to Piper, who was drawing silent circles on the tabletop with her finger. "I'll be here," he promised quietly. "No one's leaving you behind, Piper. Not on my watch." She looked up at him, searching for something. Reassurance, maybe, or the first fragile thread of belief. Hours passed in a blur of forms and questions. The sheriff's system found no missing child reports matching Piper's name, age, or description. Not in Idaho, not in Washington, not anywhere within 1,000 miles. That absence felt ominous, as if someone had gone to great lengths to erase Piper from the world's notice. By the time the sun dipped behind the clouds, painting the sky with streaks of burnt orange and violet, Noah's phone buzzed. Aiden's reply was terse but promising. "Give me 6 hours. If she exists, I'll find her." Noah sat in the back row of the sheriff's office, watching Piper color with crayons given to her by the receptionist. She drew a house, a swing set, a tiny stick figure with blonde hair holding hands with a taller one. He wondered if that figure was her father, or if, for tonight, she'd drawn him. As evening crept in, Kara returned, offering Noah a place in a temporary foster system for Piper. He shook his head. I'll take responsibility. I can be here as long as you need. She's safe with me. Kara considered him for a long moment, then nodded. You've already done more than most would. At the front desk, Ramon, the duty officer, ran a quick background check on Noah. Kara processed an emergency placement order so Piper could temporarily stay in Noah's care, while authorities continued their investigation. Later that night, he sat by Piper's bedside until she fell asleep, button tucked beneath her chin. He looked out the window at the small town, its streetlights flickering against the night. He didn't know what would come next, but he knew one thing for certain. No child deserved to believe the lie she'd been told. Somewhere in the darkness, a promise formed. A promise not just to protect, but to fight for the truth, no matter how long it took or how much it cost. The next morning brought a sky the color of unpolished steel, thick with the threat of rain. Noah sat in the tiny chair outside the makeshift sleeping room, his legs aching, eyelids raw from a night of little sleep. Every few minutes, he checked his phone for updates from Aiden, hoping for something, anything, to break the uneasy waiting. Piper slept curled on her side, button tucked close, her breath shallow and quiet. He found himself watching over her as dawn crept up, an instinct he couldn't quite explain. It was more than duty. It was the kind of vigilance he remembered from sitting at Emily's bedside, the terrible hope that maybe, if he just stayed present, nothing worse could happen. A knock on the door startled him. Kara Bishop entered with a travel mug in hand and news. Aiden Cross called. He found the legal name, Piper Dalton. Her father's Mark Dalton, morning news anchor in Spokane. Newly remarried to Marla Quinn, Kara's eyes were gentle, but her words were brisk. Still no official missing child report, at least not until last night. Spokane PD got a call from Mark Dalton. His daughter wandered off. The date and time don't line up with when you found her. Noah frowned, his mind churning. If he filed the report just last night, but Piper's been gone longer. Someone's hiding something. Kara nodded, lowering her voice. Sometimes, when families blend, there's confusion. But this doesn't feel right. She offered him a breakfast bar, which he took out of politeness. She added, "We're coordinating with Spokane CPS and PD. You'll probably be making a trip west soon." Noah glanced at Piper, who was awake now, watching the adults with wary, calculating eyes. He knelt beside her, voice gentle. "Good morning, Piper. Would you like to go for a ride today? Maybe see if we can find your dad?" Piper didn't answer, but she didn't look away either. It was enough. Kara helped them sign out, giving Noah paperwork and instructions. He signed everything: temporary guardian, permission to travel, phone numbers for emergency contacts. He noticed his hand didn't shake. In the parking lot, he buckled Piper in, then texted Aiden for the address of Spokane PD. "Already sent to your inbox," came the reply. Aiden added, "You'll want to watch the news. Mark's going on air this morning. Public plea for Piper. I've checked his record. No sign he's a bad father. But Marla Quinn? Something's off. I'll keep digging." The drive to Spokane was long, the scenery a shifting palette of pine and fog. Piper was silent, her knees drawn up, head pressed to the window. Noah tried not to crowd her, letting the quiet stretch out, filling it with small comforts. A granola bar, a fresh bottle of water, a gentle hand to steady her when they stopped for gas. He called Emily's old playlist up on the stereo, letting a soft Norah Jones song drift between them. Piper didn't complain. As they neared Spokane's city limits, Aiden called again. "Turn on Channel 9, he said. "Now." Noah did, flicking on the radio first, then pulling out his phone at a red light to catch the video feed. Mark Dalton's voice cracked through the static, raw and desperate. "If anyone has seen my daughter Piper, please, please let her come home. Piper, if you can hear me. Daddy's coming." The image on the screen showed a man unshaven, eyes rimmed red, gripping a photo of Piper in better days. The anchor beside him read the details. Date missing, last seen with Marla Quinn, no further comment. Piper saw her father's face on the tiny screen. She froze, staring. "That's my daddy." Her voice was soft, equal parts hope and disbelief. Noah pulled over, heart tight. He turned the screen toward her, but let the words come from him, not the news. "He didn't know, Piper. That's what I think. He didn't know what happened to you." Piper hugged Button closer, her lower lip trembling. She said he didn't want me. That he'd already picked a new family. Noah didn't answer with platitudes. Instead, he unbuckled, slid into the back seat beside her, and simply pulled Piper into his arms. He held her tightly, the way he would have held his own daughter, if he'd ever had the chance. He said only, "I think she lied to keep you silent. I think your dad has been looking for you the whole time." Piper did not cry, but her body slowly uncoiled, her small fingers grasping the sleeve of Noah's jacket, as if afraid he'd vanish if she let go. The moment passed, quiet and sacred. Noah knew there was no fixing what had been broken. The only thing that mattered now was presence. He'd stay until Piper no longer needed him to. When they arrived at Spokane PD, the media presence was even larger than expected. Kara met them at the door, ushering them quickly through the side entrance to avoid the cameras. Inside, Noah completed more forms, while Piper sat beside a uniformed officer who showed her how to fold paper cranes. Mark Dalton was on his way, they were told. Marla Quinn, too, accompanied by her attorney. As the minutes ticked by, Noah's phone vibrated again. "Aiden, I've sent payment for cell records and parking receipts. Marla was in Sandpoint the day Piper was found." She left Spokane for nearly 8 hours, and her car was seen on local traffic cams near May's Diner. The cost was $500, but Noah transferred it without a second thought. This wasn't a corporate expense. It was an investment in the truth, one he'd make 100 times over. Piper sat beside him on the upholstered bench, legs swinging, fingers worrying at Button's frayed ear. She turned to Noah, voice hesitant. Will he really come?" Noah nodded. "He's coming, Piper. And I'll be here too. You're not alone outside." As they waited, a black sedan idled on the far end of the lot. Through the tinted window, Noah caught a flash of a woman's face. Marla, eyes hard and unreadable. The car lingered, engine running, then slipped away just as Mark's car pulled up at the curb. Noah felt a knot of tension in his stomach, not the nervous flutter of anxiety, but a gathering storm of resolve. He squeezed Piper's hand and led her inside, into the heart of uncertainty, determined to stay until the truth was finally, painfully, brought into the light. The afternoon sky over Spokane was washed out gray, heavy with low clouds as the police cruiser eased through the barricade of reporters clustered outside the precinct. Camera lights flashed, voices shouted, and somewhere in the chaos, someone called Piper's name. But Kara Bishop and the escorting officer kept their pace brisk, steering Noah and the little girl through a side entrance, away from the circus of attention. Inside, the building was both cold and bright, the kind of light that exposed every flaw. No shadows to hide in, no comfort for trembling hands. The family interview room was small, its carpet a faded blue, its chairs upholstered with cheerful prints that couldn't mask the clinical unease. On the wall hung a pastel poster of kittens and a faded reminder, "You are safe here," that felt more like a hope than a promise. Piper hovered at the threshold, suitcase wheels silent on the thin rug, her fingers woven deep into the wool of Noah's coat. He could feel the pressure, a lifeline. Every time someone moved in the hallway, she flinched. Kara smiled softly. "We'll get you some apple slices and water, Piper, all right? You just stay with Mr. Sinclair. You're both safe here." Noah led her to a small sofa, lowering himself slowly so she could stay close behind, never breaking contact. He caught her watching the door, wide-eyed, breath shallow, as if at any moment she expected someone to yank her back into the storm she'd just escaped. Time moved in slow ripples. Through the glass, Noah saw flashes of blue uniforms, then the unmistakable silhouette of a man moving too fast to hide his panic. The door flew open. Mark Dalton burst in, hair tousled, tie loose, eyes raw with exhaustion. He dropped to his knees, not caring who watched. His whole frame shook with the effort to hold himself together. "Piper, baby girl." The words cracked in his throat, and suddenly the only sound in the room was Piper's soft, uncertain gasp. She stared at him, her face searching for the father in her memories. The father from the smiling photo still clutched in Mark's trembling hand. She didn't run to him. Not yet. Instead, her voice, small and brave, broke the silence. "You didn't want me?" It was a question and a test, each word loaded with days of loneliness, with every lie she'd been told since her world broke. Mark's composure collapsed. He reached for her, not touching, asking for permission. "Never, sweetheart. Not for a single second. You're my world. I was looking everywhere. She lied to you. I would have done anything, Piper." "Anything." Piper's chin trembled, and she pressed closer to Noah, as if to steady herself in a sea of confusion. But then, hesitantly, painfully, she stepped forward, still gripping Button, and let her father fold her into his arms. Mark wept openly, rocking her, repeating her name like a prayer. Noah found his own eyes burning, a strange ache blooming in his chest. Not envy, but the rawness of watching a wound finally begin to close. Kara and the officer gave them a few moments before gently joining them at the table. "Mr. Dalton, we need to hear from both of you about what happened. We're here to help, but we need the truth." Mark nodded, voice rough. "Of course. I'll tell you everything." Piper sat on his lap, her gaze darting from face to face, checking that Noah was still there. Each time she did, Noah nodded, a silent promise. Then the door opened again, and the temperature in the room dropped. Marla Quinn entered, composed as glass, trailed by her lawyer. She surveyed the scene with a detached chill, her eyes lingering on Piper for a split second before settling on Mark. "This is all a misunderstanding," she said, tone clipped and rehearsed. "Piper has a habit of running off for attention. You know that, Mark." The lawyer stepped forward. "My client has made every effort to be a supportive parent. These allegations are misguided." Piper shrank behind Mark, but her eyes locked onto Marla's with an expression that was older than any 6-year-old should wear, equal parts fear and defiance. As Marla spoke, Piper shuddered, physically recoiling, and slid behind Noah, pressing herself to his side. Noah instinctively placed his arm around her, drawing her in. He felt her trembling, the silent vibration of panic, and his hand found hers, warm and firm. The gesture said everything. "You're not facing this alone. Not anymore." Mark's voice was sharp. She didn't run off, Marla. You said you were visiting your sister. There is no sister. I have cell records, parking receipts. You drove to Idaho? Why? Marla's lips pressed into a thin line. I went for a drive. Piper misunderstood. Kara's voice was careful but relentless. We have evidence that places you at May's diner, Marla. Piper was left there, alone. You need to answer for that. The lawyer tried to interject, but Kara held up a hand. You are not free to leave this building. This is now a formal investigation into abandonment and neglect. There are also questions about obstruction and misleading law enforcement. As the confrontation unfolded, Noah kept his attention on Piper, holding her steady as the room filled with tension. The sight of her, so small, gripping Button and his hand as if both were the only anchors in a world gone upside down, hit him with a ferocity he didn't expect. It wasn't just protection he felt. It was the overwhelming need to be present, to be the solid ground she'd never had before. Mark turned to Noah, emotion thick in his voice. Thank you. You kept her safe. I can never repay you for that. Noah shook his head. Just love her. Better than the people who failed her. Marla's gaze swept over them one last time. Cold, calculated. Heroes get tired, Mr. Sinclair. Her voice was almost a hiss. Noah didn't flinch. He looked past her, to the light catching the purple threads of Piper's sleeve. So do villains, he replied quietly. With Marla and her attorney led from the room, the atmosphere thawed. Piper, still holding Noah's hand, looked up at him with an uncertain hope. Will you still be here? After this? She asked. He crouched down, meeting her eyes, and squeezed her hand. Yes, Piper. For as long as you want me, Kara approached and placed a gentle hand on Piper's shoulder. You're safe now, honey. We're going to take care of you and your dad. As they left the room together, sunlight spilled through the front windows, a sudden golden warmth after so much shadow. Reporters still clamored outside, but all Noah could see was Piper, caught between two worlds, learning that maybe, just maybe, the truth could set her free. But deep down, he knew the hardest work was still ahead. For Piper, for Mark, and for himself, the work of staying, of healing, of turning the first fragile hope into something that would last. The morning after the reunion felt like the aftermath of a storm, calm on the surface, but the air inside the precinct was electric with tension. Piper sat in the small office reserved for sensitive cases, her feet barely touching the carpet, the ever-present Button in her lap. She wore a borrowed hoodie, purple with silver threads catching the light, sleeves pushed over her hands. Mark paced near the window, every few steps pausing to check on her, as if afraid she might vanish if he blinked. Noah stayed close, an anchor in a room that had seen too many children wait for justice that never came. A knock rattled the door. Lieutenant J. Kim stepped in, folders in hand, eyes set with determination. He greeted Mark and Noah, then knelt beside Piper, offering her a soft smile. Hey there, Piper. I've brought some pictures and notes I want to look at. You can help if you want, or just listen. Whatever makes you comfortable. Piper nodded, her voice a whisper. Okay. J. Kim turned to Mark and Noah. Aiden Cross got us what we needed. Gas receipts, parking logs, and cell phone pings put Marla's car in Sandpoint on the night Piper was found. She was nowhere near her supposed destination, in Spokane. He tapped the folder. Surveillance from a gas station shows Marla getting coffee alone. No Piper in sight, just a pink suitcase in the back seat. And phone records? She called no one after leaving Spokane. Not a single call to Mark, CPS, or any relative. This is not a mistake or confusion. It's deliberate. Mark's hands balled into fists. He looked at his daughter, who was drawing slow circles on the arm of the chair, her eyes glazed with worry. Kara Bishop joined the group, her presence firm but gentle. "We're moving forward with an emergency order. Piper, you're going home with your dad. There'll be no contact with Marla. She can't reach you, and you don't have to see her again unless you want to. And you don't have to want to." Piper met her eyes, then Noah's. The tension in her jaw eased, just a fraction. "Thank you," she said softly. Dr. Savannah Lee's face flickered on the video screen. Called in for a trauma-informed interview, she waved gently at Piper. The interview took place in a quiet room with a one-way mirror, away from any observers. Marla, accompanied by her attorney, was interviewed separately in another room. Piper nodded, clutching Button close. Dr. Lee's questions were gentle, patient. She asked about the drive, the diner, and the suitcase. Piper's answers were slow but certain. She named the bridge they crossed, the color of the diner's walls, the number of the table she sat at. She described the words Marla had told her. She says, "I don't deserve dinner. Because I ruin things." She remembered the soup, the crackers, and the way Noah sat across from her and didn't push. Her stare was empty, almost bored, but beneath it was something else. A threat, a silent message. "I won't let you out." Noah felt it too. The way Piper shrank into herself each time Marla's gaze landed on her, the slight tremor in her small hand. When Marla finally did speak, it was to repeat her tired defense. "Piper runs off for attention. She's always been difficult, always telling stories." At those words, Piper recoiled, eyes down, knuckles white on Button's paw. Without thinking, Noah reached across and took her hand, steady and warm. The room seemed to tilt in that moment, the old world of doubt and blame replaced by a new one of presence, proof, and quiet courage. Piper squeezed his fingers, and when she looked up again, her eyes had cleared. Dr. Lee's questions continued, each answer building a bridge of truth. The bridge, the suitcase, table 7, no dinner. Each detail matched the evidence, each memory a nail in the coffin of Marla's story. Lieutenant Kim closed the folder. "That's enough. Piper, you did everything right. You told the truth. That's all we ever needed." Kara placed a hand on Mark's shoulder. "We're granting you emergency custody. Piper stays with you. Marla, there'll be a restraining order effective immediately, and the district attorney will be in touch regarding charges of abandonment, neglect, and obstruction. You're not to contact Piper or Mark in any way." Marla barely blinked. She stood, gathering her bag as if she'd just finished a dull appointment. When Marla was gone, the room let out a breath. Mark knelt in front of Piper, tears standing in his eyes. "We're going home, honey. Just you and me. No more secrets, no more lies." Piper let herself believe it. She climbed into his arms, pressing her face into his neck, and for the first time, Noah saw the smallest, realest smile on her lips. As Mark led Piper out of the room for a walk in the garden, sunlight spilled across the hall, a new kind of brightness. Noah watched them go, his heart heavy but full, knowing Piper would still carry scars. But for the first time, she had a room, a family that believed her. He lingered by the door, the hush of the precinct broken only by the distant sound of children laughing outside, and he let himself hope that maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something better. But as he turned to leave, the words lingered in his mind. "Heroes get tired, maybe so. But for Piper, and for the broken, brave kids like her, he'd keep showing up, no matter how long it took. In the weeks that followed, the world tilted gently into a new kind of rhythm. One built not on emergencies, but on the daily, stubborn work of staying. At Priest Lake, autumn deepened. The leaves outside Noah's cabin flickered red and gold in the watery sunlight. The silence that had once pressed in so thickly was now punctuated, every evening at 7:30 sharp, by the warm glow of Noah's laptop screen and the flickering, golden laughter that reached him through the speakers. It had started as a simple check-in, one call from Piper and Mark to say goodnight. But it grew into ritual. Piper with her sketchbook, sprawled on the carpet of her new bedroom, and Noah in his old leather chair by the fireplace, Charlotte's Web open in his lap. He read aloud, steady and gentle, while Piper colored. Her head bent over the page, tongue poking out in concentration. Sometimes she'd interrupt, holding a drawing to the camera, a wobbly version of their story, stick figures labeled me, Daddy, Noah, button each time. Noah felt something shift in him, as if a splinter long embedded had finally worked itself loose. For Mark and Piper, life was a process of learning to trust time again. Mark called often, sometimes just a tired thank you after a hard day, sometimes to ask Noah's advice about night terrors or school lunches. Kara Bishop and Aidan Cross were still part of the circle too. Legal documents, check-ins, safety plans, the marathon of paperwork that slowly, relentlessly built the scaffolding of a new life. And through it all, Noah didn't quit. He was there for the slow healing, the phone calls after nightmares, the emails about drawings and grades, the quiet, practical help no one else saw. Noah saw the tangible evidence of change in the texts Mark sent. Photos of Piper in her new bedroom, star stickers scattered across the ceiling, a brand new desk topped with a riot of colored markers and a stack of clean paper. But there, clutched in Piper's small hand, was the old Sky Bridge t-shirt, worn and too large. A talisman from her first safe night, and a reminder that even as she stepped into the future, she carried a piece of that bridge with her. For Noah, work took on new meaning. At Sky Bridge Logistics, he called a board meeting, surprising his executives by laying out a plan not for expansion, but for the Table 7 Fund. It would be a series of micro-grants, quiet support for rural diners, clinics, and small-town CPS programs, all the little places where kids like Piper might slip through the cracks. If we want to move the world, he told his team, sometimes the smallest hinge swings the biggest door. There was resistance. Of course there was. But Noah didn't blink. He was, at last, a man who knew where his power could matter most. Each evening, as dusk settled, Noah set his phone on the counter and prepared for Piper's call. It was as regular as the changing light. Piper would pop onto the screen, cheeks flushed, hair wild, usually with Button propped beside her. "Hi, Noah," she'd sing, and for the next half hour, they would share their days. His, sometimes dull and corporate, hers, full of playground victories, glittery crafts, and library books. She demanded updates on his houseplants, and more than once, scolded him for eating dinner too late. One evening, she brandished a homemade invitation, drawn in purple marker and covered with butterfly stickers. "You have to come to my birthday. Chocolate cake, purple balloons. No excuses." Her smile was shy but proud, and Mark, laughing in the background, added, "She's been practicing blowing up balloons all week." Noah grinned and promised, "I wouldn't miss it for the world." But beneath these rituals, life kept its undercurrent of worry. Noah stayed up late reading court documents, talking strategy with Kara and Aiden, poring over legal advice. Some nights, he and Mark stood outside under the Spokane stars, sipping black coffee and talking in low voices. About guilt, about fear, about the hard work of being the grown-ups kids depended on. "It's not over yet," Mark would say, and Noah would nod, knowing what it meant. That the fight for Piper's peace would be long, and the scars slow to fade. Then, the night before the birthday party, Mark's text arrived. Notice came in. Formal charges against Marla. The DA's going for full obstruction and neglect. Press might pick it up. Noah's gut tightened. He glanced at his phone, then at the laptop where Piper's drawing, a stick figure family under a sky full of stars, hung in pride of place above his desk. He didn't want to worry her. But Piper had ears sharper than most, and that evening, she overheard the adults talking in low voices. Noah caught her on screen, chewing her sleeve, eyes anxious. "Will she come back?" she whispered. Noah shook his head gently. "She can't hurt you anymore, Piper. Not with so many people watching out for you." Still, as the call ended, Piper's face lingered in his mind, brave but uncertain, clinging to the hope that the new rituals would hold. Noah closed the laptop and stared into the cabin's quiet, feeling the gravity of what it meant to stay. To show up day after day, even when the story's happy ending felt far away. Yet as he turned out the lights, the echo of Piper's laughter still hung in the air. A reminder that healing was not a moment, but a practice. And for the first time in years, Noah wanted nothing more than to keep showing up for it. The day of Piper's birthday arrived with the tentative warmth of early spring. Spokane's morning sunlight glinted off car hoods parked along Mark's curb, and the Dalton backyard, usually quiet, was suddenly alive with color and sound. Purple streamers hung from every fence post, curling in the breeze. Helium balloons bobbed above a makeshift craft table that overflowed with colored markers, glue, pipe cleaners, and more glitter than any rational parent would allow. Children darted past in a swirl of laughter, their sneakers leaving damp prints on the grass. From the porch, the scent of chocolate cake mingled with the sharp sweetness of lemonade. Noah arrived just before noon, carrying a wrapped box under one arm and brushing a little lint off his navy jacket. The nervousness in his chest, both strange and familiar. He caught sight of Piper before she saw him. She was in the thick of the party, her hair pinned up with purple barrettes, cheeks dusted with sparkles, moving from station to station with purpose and joy. Her new friends called her name. She waved wildly when she finally spotted Noah, her whole face lighting up. "Noah!" she yelled, abandoning her half-decorated cupcake to run to him. She skidded to a stop, grabbing his hand and tugging him toward the crafts table. "You promised you'd come. You have to help with the crafts. Everyone else is too slow." He laughed, letting her lead him through the crowd. Mark was nearby, sleeves rolled up, his face more open and peaceful than Noah had ever seen. "Glad you made it," Mark said, clapping a hand on Noah's shoulder. "She's talked about nothing but you for weeks." Fair warning. She's in full party planner mode. The afternoon passed in a whirl of color. Noah was drafted as Captain Crafts, and by the end of the first hour, his hands and much of his jacket were streaked with purple glitter and neon glue. Piper crowned him with a lopsided paper tiara, and the other kids chanted his title like it was some sacred office. "You're officially one of us now," Piper declared, her eyes shining with mischief. No washing off the glitter. Ever cake came after, thick with chocolate frosting and studded with edible stars. Piper blew out her candles with a wish she wouldn't share, but when she met Noah's eyes, he knew. Some wishes were too precious to speak aloud. Mark knelt beside her as the guests sang, arms wrapped around her shoulders, the two of them framed by sunlight and celebration. As the sun dipped low, painting the backyard in golden light, the children drifted to the swing set on the far side of the lawn. Piper pulled Noah along, insisting he take the swing beside hers. She pushed off, toes pointed, the chains squeaking softly. They swung in easy silence, dusk humming with the last birds of the day and the gentle clatter of distant dishes. For a long moment, nothing needed to be said. Then Piper's voice, small, uncertain, honest, broke the stillness. When she said I didn't deserve dinner, I thought maybe I didn't. She gripped the swing's chain tighter, her eyes fixed on her shoes as they scuffed the dirt. Sometimes I still wonder if she was right. Noah steadied his own swing, letting it slow. He waited for her to look at him, then said softly but firmly, "You deserve dinner. You deserve bedtime stories. You deserve people who stay, Piper." He reached over, his hand settling gently over hers on the chain. "And you always will." No matter what anyone else ever says, Piper's eyes glistened, but she smiled. She leaned sideways until her head rested on Noah's shoulder, her swing rocking in time with his. Mark joined them after a while, kneeling in front of Piper so their eyes were level. "No more lies between us ever again," he promised, his voice rough. "You're safe now." "You're home," Piper nodded, tears streaking her cheeks, but one hand never let go of Noah's. Mark reached out and squeezed both their hands together, the three of them a silent circle of trust. As the party wound down and the last guests filtered out, Piper disappeared for a moment. She returned with a folded piece of paper, her parting gift. She pressed it into Noah's palm with a grin that was all bravery and hope. "I made this for you." Noah unfolded the drawing carefully. 3 figures stood hand in hand. Piper in the middle, Mark on one side, Noah on the other, each with impossibly wide smiles. Above their heads, Button the bear floated like a balloon, arms outstretched. At the top, in careful purple crayon, she'd written, "Home, everywhere." He swallowed hard. "Thank you, Piper. I'll keep it safe." As twilight fell and the backyard emptied, Mark and Noah sat on the porch steps while Piper ran inside to put on her pajamas. The air was heavy with the scent of cake and grass and springtime promise. "You know," Mark said quietly, "I don't think I could have gotten through this without you." Noah shook his head. "You would have, but I'm glad I didn't miss it." Later, Noah drove the winding road back to his cabin at Priest Lake. The world outside his windows was dark, but inside, something was changed. Softer, warmer, a place transformed by memory and meaning. He stepped inside, setting Piper's drawing in the center of his kitchen table. He opened his journal and wrote one sentence. "She came to me lost and left me found." Noah stood in his kitchen, eyes roaming over the space that once felt so hollow, so purposely empty. Now the extra chair at his table no longer felt like a symbol of absence, but of possibility. A place waiting for company, for laughter, for the unexpected arrivals that turn loss into belonging. As he switched off the lights, the lake shimmered silver outside the window. In the hush of the cabin, the extra chair stood ready, a permanent, quiet proof that Piper always, always deserved dinner. And so did he. If this story touched your heart, even just a little, we invite you to stay with us, because here at Restoring Tales, every story reminds us that love, kindness, and second chances still exist. There are more tales waiting, of resilience, of hope, and of quiet heroes among us. So if you believe in the healing power of love and the beauty of life's small moments, be sure to subscribe to Restoring Tales and turn on notifications, because the next story might be the one your heart's been waiting for. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.